Can I have your attention, please? Please turn your attention to the screen.
Is that a great video? I come here today as just a point of personal privilege. My name is Tom Cochran, and I'm a Baptist, and I grew up in a little town in South Georgia. And at Christmas time, I went to Sunday school, and they read the Bible to me, and they said, the Mother Mary, she found that she was with child, and she pondered. And I said to myself, what in the hell does that mean? So I went to my grandmother, and I said, what does ponder mean? She said, well, you know, they're trying to figure out where they can go lay the baby in the manger. And I said, okay. Well, guess what? There's another great mayor, great person that found herself with child. And her name is Paige Cognetti from Scranton, Pennsylvania. So when she found that she was with child, she pondered. But she pondered, how in the hell can I get to the meeting? So I have decided I am going to drive. And so let's bring out the Pennsylvania 4. Now, let me show you how they got here after she pondered. She didn't get on the plane. Let me show you how they got here. Let's have the video. Yay!
In Williamsport,
In Scranton.
in Pittsburgh,
In Lancaster.
in la ciudad de Allentown,
Mayors
are rebuilding Pennsylvania.
Yay! You want to just say something? You want to say thank you?
Thank you, Tom, and the conference. We started talking about this in January because, yes, I was pondering, how am I going to do this? I'm going to be pretty pregnant by then, and Pennsylvania to Columbus is not that far. So we started talking and talked a little bit more in March. Nan Whaley and Sarah Durr, Dave Gatton, we were thinking, what if we made this an ARPA press tour? So we did 3 stops on Wednesday, 3 stops on Thursday. We got awesome feedback throughout the entire state, had a meeting with the Lieutenant Governor. It was an incredible opportunity to show, not just tell, but show how the American Rescue Plan and the direct money we got from the federal government is helping us rebuild Pennsylvania. In addition to that, when I first came to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I realized that we didn't have enough Pennsylvania mayors, so we've been working hard to really come together as Pennsylvania mayors. So Ohio, we're coming for you.
Great. Thank you.
Well, that was something. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This conference has just started, but we're already looking ahead to next year, to our 92nd annual meeting in, you guessed it, Kansas City, Missouri. Here to provide a preview of the 92nd annual meeting is the current Kansas City mayor, as well as the former Kansas City mayor who served from 2011 till 2019. Please welcome Mayor Quinton Lucas and former Mayor Sly James Jr.
Good afternoon, and we are excited to make you hear even more about Kansas City than you might otherwise have wanted to. You might have seen the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year. Thank you. We got a few. It's all good, Eagles fans. You may have heard that Kansas City is a World Cup city in 2026. Like several other cities represented at this conference, we're excited to have folks from around the world coming to Kansas City. And about the same time we learned about the World Cup, I was jumping up and down and telling everybody in Kansas City, we will have the mayors coming to Kansas City in the summer of 2024. We look forward to hosting this very meeting in Kansas City, Missouri, coming up in June 2024. And as part of our effort to put together an exceptional event, I thought there'd be no one better to have as a great collaborator and friend, the former mayor of Kansas City, and still my mother's favorite mayor of Kansas City, the Honorable Sly James.
It's always great to be back. I can tell you, all you mayors and former mayors, that life after office ain't bad at all. We want you to come to Kansas City. It's an easy place to get to. We got a brand new airport that we just opened. It's opened to rave reviews. It is no longer a Soviet-style 1950s bunker. It is now a place that has every amenity that you could want and some that you haven't even thought of before. But the main thing that we want you to come to Kansas City for is because this organization is a lot like the people of Kansas City. We work together, we're friendly, and we want to accept and be open to everyone. So come to Kansas City, enjoy our barbecue. You can get there pretty easily from any place in the country within 2.5 to 3 hours, and we want you to come and have a great time. You will not have enough time to fully explore all the things you're about to see in our video.
We're thrilled to host the U.S. Conference of Mayors in 2024 here in the city of Fountains, Kansas City. It's on the map more than ever before, and we cannot wait to show you what we have to offer. We'll see you in 2024.
I'm standing here overlooking some of the best and most iconic features of Kansas City, Kaufman Center for Performing Arts, our great downtown, a free streetcar, the site of the National Football League draft, where hundreds of thousands of people came and enjoyed Kansas City barbecue and everything else about this great city. That's what's going to happen to you. You may have no idea now, but when you get here, you're going to find the idea and you're going to enjoy every minute of it because Kansas City is happening, Kansas City's got a lot to offer, and you're not even going to have enough time to scratch the surface. So we're looking forward to seeing you here where we have friendly people, we have a free streetcar, and we have a great city that you can explore and have fun in and get some work done.
We'll see you in Kansas City.
Love you, brother. Be good. Looking good, both of you.
Thank you.
They won the Super Bowl in my city, so I'm pleased to introduce now the 18th Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. She's in her home state of Ohio, where she was the first female and first African-American mayor of Warrensville Heights, and later served as U.S. Representative for the 11th Congressional District of Ohio. Secretary Fudge knows that affordability and ownership are key to an expanding economy and a sustainable quality of life. Working with HUD is critical for all mayors from all regions in securing the American dream for their residents. We are thankful that you are joining us today. Please join me in welcoming HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Listen, it's a pleasure to be here, especially in my home state of Ohio. All the Ohio folks, the Ohio mayors, just like stand up. I am biased. All the Ohio mayors, stand up. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for what you do. Mayor Suarez, my friend, thank you for having me again. Mayor Ginther, Mayor Shive, and CEO Cochran, and the Assistant Executive Director, Eugene Lowe, who I understand does a great deal of work with our staff. Mayor Ginther, I want to thank you for hosting us in your hometown. Columbus is a place of many fond memories for me and good times, as I'm an alum of the Ohio State University. It's always nice to be in Ohio. It's always good to be at home. I am joined today by many HUD leaders, which I think are over to my left, including our outstanding regional administrators who work with mayors and your staffs to address housing and community development throughout the country. We are here because we need you to know how important you are to us. Stand up. They are here from across the country to have office hours for you and your staff. We want to be sure that you know that if nobody else is working for you, HUD is working for you. They are my voice, and so you can have any discussion with them that you'd like. You know, I say this often, and I do believe very strongly that it is true. Those who are closest to the people are in the best position to lead. No one knows the ins and outs of a community like a mayor. Your constituents are your neighbors. Their problems are quite literally your own problems. That makes your job as rewarding as it is challenging. Mayors, you are on the front lines of every crisis our nation faces. When the going gets tough, your communities rely on you to get them through the difficult times. When disaster strikes, you are among the first on the scene and the last to leave. For you, the stakes are high and the impact is personal. That is why HUD works so hard on your behalf, especially because, as we all know, there are few things more personal than where you live. That is why the President has prioritized strong investments in housing, including housing for the most vulnerable among us through his 2024 budget. As an administration, we value housing that is safe, climate efficient and resilient, accessible and affordable housing, fair housing, and inclusive communities. We especially value the critical need to preserve the homes we have, build new ones, and find innovative solutions to our nation's housing supply issues. We cannot ensure our values match our reality without you. Your partnership is critical. Your work to connect people to housing, to build sustainable and resilient communities, to ensure our neighborhoods are inclusive and thriving is important. We need you now more than ever. Work with us to face our most pressing challenges, not by retreating, but by doubling down on the things we know that work. Shirley Chisholm wrote, "America has the laws and the material resources it takes to ensure justice for all its people. What we have lacked," she said, "is the heart, the humanity, and the Christian love it takes to get there." Under this administration, we do have the heart to do what it takes to ensure that all people can live well. That starts with investing in housing. Every investment we make in housing and in our communities is an investment in people. It is an investment in improving lives. We cannot solve and ultimately end homelessness without housing. Housing is what helps make survivors of gender-based violence and trafficking find safety. Well-maintained and properly funded public and assisted housing, paired with our robust voucher programs, provide critical support for families with low incomes. Sustainable and resilient housing reduces families' energy burdens, helps us meet our carbon reduction goals, and ensures our communities can withstand our uncertain climate future. Without housing, it is more difficult for people to be healthy or to recover from addiction. Without housing, seniors and people with disabilities are unable to live with the dignity they deserve. Without a home, children have no place to study or do their homework. Their parents struggle to maintain stable employment. Housing makes our lives better. As HUD Secretary, it is my honor to be your voice in Washington, to advocate for you, to work with you, our federal partners, and the White House, to use housing as a vehicle to improve lives, to make communities stronger and more resilient, to address homelessness and increase the supply of affordable housing. Over the past 2 years, the Biden-Harris administration has deployed resources and investments to communities large and small that are already making a difference. In Rutland, Vermont, leaders used home and CDBG funds to transform an abandoned masonry facility into affordable housing. Housing with community spaces for socializing and supportive services that benefit people transitioning out of homelessness. In High Point, North Carolina, leaders leveraged the Section 108 loan to obtain more than $10 million in private capital to construct a multifamily rental development. The new development will ensure working families have a safe place to call home, complete with a playground for children and a clubhouse for events. In Seattle, Mayor Harrell and local leaders leveraged the historic funding provided by the President's American Rescue Plan to transition more than 5,600 people experiencing homelessness into permanent housing. In fact, Seattle is one of more than 100 cities and localities that joined our pledge to use federal resources to address homelessness with housing and supportive services. Your commitment under the House America initiative demonstrated what is possible when the federal government invests in communities and mayors step up in words and action. In just 15 months, House America communities helped more than 100,000 individuals and families transition from homelessness into permanent housing. Over that same period, these communities added more than 40,000 new deeply affordable units into development. Thank you to those who joined me in our House America initiative. Now we will continue that work through our administration-wide efforts. When I addressed you last year, I shared that for the first time ever, we were dedicating resources to address unsheltered and rural homelessness. As a part of that commitment, we have awarded more than $500 million to help people transition from unsheltered and rural housing into stable housing with access to support. That includes $486 million in grants and $43 million in stability vouchers we awarded to public housing authorities on just yesterday. The stability vouchers we awarded will connect more than 3,000 very low-income people to housing. This is just a glimpse of the lives that we have been able to improve by utilizing federal resources. These are just a few examples of what's possible when we work together to make communities better, to lower costs for families, and to help you confront the crisis you face every day, to ensure our nation is prepared when disaster strikes, to build an America that works for everyone who calls this great nation home. As long as President Biden is in office, we will continue doing all we can to provide your communities the funding and support you need. We know what happens when that funding is not available. There is an estimated shortage of 3.8 million homes in this country today. That shortage has contributed to higher rents and higher home prices, which fall on everyday people, people who find themselves cost-burdened by the price of their housing. They risk instability, displacement, eviction, and homelessness. We do have what it takes to fix this. We can remove barriers to development that discourage affordable housing production. We can preserve the homes we have and ensure they are resilient. Addressing the housing supply shortage and removing barriers to affordable housing production is a priority of this administration. That's why we worked with the White House to deploy an aggressive housing supply action plan. In fact, we are getting ready to launch 3 new competitive grants to help increase the supply of homes across the country. One of these will award $85 million to communities that are making progress by improving their zoning practices. These grants will mark the first time we're making funding available to develop and implement housing policy plans, improving housing strategies, and facilitating the production of more homes. Mayors, we have to find ways to increase home building in our communities, and we're hopeful that this will help. We can no longer allow our neighbors to tell us we don't want it in their backyard. We can no longer allow people to do that. If we're going to be good neighbors, then we need to act like it. Additionally, we will make $225 million available for manufactured housing, because manufactured housing is something that our communities need to take a look at. And another $75 million into grants to allow continuums of care to build new permanent supportive housing. We no longer can build our parents' and our grandparents' houses. We have to build the houses of the future. Our goal is to give states and local leaders more opportunities to preserve and expand housing supply, especially for low and moderate income families. I hope that you will join us on our journey. Amanda Gordon writes in The Hill We Climb, when day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? She says there is always light if we're brave enough to see it, if we're only brave enough to be it. Mayors, you have to be the light in the never-ending shade. I see that light in these young mayors that are here that are trying to carry the mantle that we have laid down. It is not hard for us to find light in the never-ending shade with mayors like Bibb and Aftab and Murray from Ohio, Gallega and Romero from Arizona, Smith of Arkansas, Woodford and Reed of Alabama, Breed, Bass, and Gloria of California. Mayors, you have to let your light shine. We need to keep setting ambitious goals to rehouse people experiencing homelessness. Leverage the Inflation Reduction Act, the billions of dollars it included, to stretch the funding you have and make new and upgraded housing more sustainable and resilient. You need to build collaborations with local partners, public housing authorities, utilities, and energy offices, homeless continuums of care, developers, and the private sector, the philanthropic sector, and the faith community. You must pursue the policies that put people first. Lead with compassion. Help us show the world that America has not lost its heart. Mayors, you have to be the light. It is said that it is darkest just before dawn, but I promise you morning is coming. We can't lose hope or yield to the weight of our problems. Even though it may seem dark now, I promise you that morning is coming. Be the light on the hill, the candle in dark places. Be a ray of hope, because the people need you and they need to see you. So mayors, I'm asking you to be the light and know that morning is coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Fudge. Next, let me introduce the American Institute of Architects Executive Vice President and Chief Executive Officer. The American Institute of Architects is a network of more than 96,000 architects and design professionals throughout 200 chapters committed to enhancing the built environment. Please join me in welcoming Lakeisha Woods.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm trying to figure out how I had to follow Secretary Fudge. Well, it is such a pleasure to be here. AIA is thrilled to partner with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We have tremendous respect for the work you do every day. We recognize that mayors face many challenges, and we know that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. We are committed to working together to continue these conversations and collaborations, because architects are your partners for progress. Last year, I was on this stage with Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner. Yes, yay. I spoke about him and his city's climate action plan, with its focus on resilience, as well as other exciting sustainability plans for the city. And he said, architects look broadly at problems, define various outcomes, and collaborate to determine unbiased and beneficial solutions for all parties. That is exactly why we are here. Like mayors, architects are civic-minded problem solvers, driven to shape our cities and improve people's lives. We take pride in being able to help communities envision and build a better, more resilient, and inclusive future. Like mayors, AIA is committed to addressing the climate crisis and racial and gender equity in our society. In Kansas City, AIA supported and worked with city leaders to ensure that energy efficiency and resiliency standards were not watered down during the recent Building Energy Code update. Adopting the latest building codes saves building owners and tenants money on their utilities, reduces negative health impacts, and saves $11 for every $1 spent by mitigating recovery from future natural disasters. Here in Columbus, AIA mayors participated in the Building Task Force to shape the city's climate action plan and meet its goal of being carbon neutral by 2050 and reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030. AIA and architects in your city or town are ready to work with you to address the role buildings play in reducing emissions and conserving natural resources. I invite you to take a moment and think to yourself, what about your city makes you proud? Many people associate pride with the spaces where they live, work, learn, or play. You as mayors positively impact how those spaces are designed by working with architects. You have the power to design healthy, sustainable places that empower, lift up, and provide pride in the community. You have the power. You control it. You inspire. AIA has more than 200 state and local chapters covering every community in every state to support more than 96,000 individual members leveraging design to make an impact. If you'd like to connect with AIA or meet architects in your community, please scan the QR code on the screen, or you can find me after this session or meet with my colleagues at our booth. If you want to build a more sustainable and equitable future for your city, I urge you to connect with us. If your city does not have a chief architect, this is the perfect time to put one in place. Please reach out to AIA to learn about the benefits of activating a chief architect in your city. As you prepare for the decisions that you need to make, from buildings to infrastructure, remember, architects are your partners for progress. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the Walton Family Foundation's Home Region Program Senior Advisor, who is our moderator today for a panel discussion focused on how young mayors are leveraging their energy, creativity, and innovation to redefine collaboration and shape the future of our local government across this country. I remember when I was considered a young mayor, pre-white hairs. He is a leader of the Foundation's Arkansas Mississippi Delta Initiative, supporting emerging leaders and local organizations to reshape the region's economic, educational, and creative landscape. He is former Arkansas State Board member and a 2019 Presidential Leadership Scholar and program of the George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, and Lyndon B. Johnson Foundation. Woo, that's a mouthful. This is one in a series of valuable discussions on strengthening our cities that the Walton Family Foundation has brought to our annual and winter meetings, and we are grateful for their support. In this discussion today are two mayors who will illustrate how collaboration and shared responsibility can build more resilient communities, and they are mayors of Jackson, Mississippi, and Little Rock, Arkansas. We look forward to hearing from them, and so it's my pleasure to introduce Kim Davis and Chokwe Lumumba and Mayor Frank Scott, Jr. Come on out. By the way, you know I gotta call you out, Chokwe. Chokwe's a mayor's son like I am, so we have that extra bond.
I want to thank you all for having me today. My name is Kim Davis with the Walton Family Foundation, and as I was preparing to come to this convening, I mentioned to my wife the conversation we'll be having and the limited time that we have to get into the conversation, and she reminded me in what the Davis household we call the 5 B's, which are be brief, brother, be brief. So I will do my best with my intro to be as brief as possible so we can get to having a great conversation with these two mayors. At the Walton Family Foundation, there are 3 key initiatives that we're focused on. 1, providing high-quality education for families, students, and communities across the country. The second thing is protecting our rivers, lakes, and streams to ensuring that folks have the opportunity from a recreation standpoint and businesses have the opportunity to enjoy this resource. And then thirdly, where we are home-based in Northwest Arkansas, we call the home region. And so we do work there in Northwest Arkansas as well as part of the Arkansas-Mississippi Delta. A lot of what we do is based upon a number of key learnings that we have. And what we've realized is that there are 4 key things that we try to do when we look at entering into a community. First, we want to look, we want to listen, we want to learn, and we want to lead. And so today we're going to spend time listening and learning from these 2 outstanding mayors around the issue of youth leadership or next generation leaders. These 2 mayors were both elected as the youngest mayors of their cities, and so we're excited to have an opportunity to have a conversation with them. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation. We're going to start with Mayor Lumumba. Mayor, we understand and have all been made aware, obviously, of what's been happening in Jackson, specifically in regards to the water crisis. 1, can you provide us with a brief update of what is happening on the ground right now? And then 2, talk to us a little bit about how the youth got involved with that. What were their ability to drive certain outcomes and drive conversations that may not have happened before?
Absolutely. Well, first, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share not only our experience, but to share this moment with my fraternity of mayors. I will let you know that before we came out, Frank took the liberty of reminding me that I'm not a young mayor anymore now that I'm on the other side of 40. So let me get that shot at him first. But first and foremost, I want to thank so many of you who have been supportive through the emergency, the water emergency. So many mayors in this room sent water to support the residents of Jackson. So I ask if you give yourselves a round of applause. So, you know, we believe that community has to be the center of all solutions, and we have to take advantage of collective genius in order to solve our problems. The issue of water has been a legacy issue, one that has plagued the residents of Jackson for generations. In fact, my predecessors have long argued for the need for support, not saying that it's a matter of if, but a matter of when the system would crash, and it has proven that is, in fact, true. So by the blessing of philanthropic support by organizations like the Bloomberg Foundation, also the Kellogg Foundation, and most importantly, the Biden administration has come through true to their promise. President Biden promised and delivered that he would not forget the residents of Jackson. And so this challenge that we have been dealing with, I removed to Jackson in 1988. I remember in 1989 our system being debilitated after a freeze that took place. And there have been too many circumstances to recount over my life of when we've had low water pressure, boil water notices, and the like. And so in the latest challenge that took place, at the end of the year omnibus bill, they provided $600 million to the city of Jackson and another $200 million, so $800 million total, in order to support our water system. So that could only happen by so many of you that lifted up this challenge and got the word out of this thing that is humiliating to the residents of Jackson. So once again, please give yourselves a round of applause.
Mayor Scott, let's pivot to you. You know, at the Walton Family Foundation, we believe those closest to the problem are also closest to the solution. We firmly believe in that folks on the ground, given the opportunity and the resources, can have some significant impact and change. I know recently you've been seeing a lot of that significant impact and change, considering the unfortunate situation with the tornadoes that touched down in Little Rock. Can you talk to us a little bit, give us an update on what's happening in that space, as well as, once again, how you saw young leadership step up and provide the support to help drive the community forward.
Sure. I think first and foremost for everyone to understand, on March 31st, the city of Little Rock experienced a high-end F3 tornado, which was 1 mile per hour less than a F4 tornado. For those who do not believe in climate change, most tornadoes are on the ground for about 4 minutes. This particular tornado was on the ground for 29 minutes. Impacted about 3,000 structures within the city of Little Rock. It's by the grace of God that no one died. Happened around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If it would have happened 3 hours later, we do not know how many casualties we would have had. But through the great spirit of resiliency and the responsibility of the city government, we were able to respond quickly for our residents to make certain that we protected the public health welfare of each resident. We're very grateful for many different philanthropic organizations like the Walton family and others who were able, within a matter of a week, we raised about $500,000 to ensure that our residents had exactly what they needed. In a time like this, when you have homeowners who are always going to have some type of insurance, but you really have to think about those renters who may have not had insurance. And so we're just so grateful that we were able to respond quickly. And from a youth perspective, we saw so many different young organizations step up to really focus on how we mobilize in a minute's time, and then move from that mobilization to moving towards action, and then focusing on how we sustain that particular movement. But our youth and our young adults within the city of Little Rock could not have stepped up even better during a time such as this.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Mayor Scott, I'm going to stay with you for a second because I know the idea of youth, at-risk youth, education has been something that was always a part of your administration, right? This tornado did not create the type of atmosphere that caused you to mobilize youth groups. You've always been focused on them. Can you talk a little bit about your administration and what role that plays in the education space, in the youth space in the city of Little Rock?
Sure. I think many people know about the Little Rock 9 crisis of 1957. Ernest Green was the first black graduate. One of the two things he's always shared, for Little Rock to truly reach its true potential, we must ensure that we have diversity in the marketplace and educational achievement. That being said, when we stepped foot in office, we wanted to ensure that our brothers and sisters that were at risk within the Little Rock School District at the time under state control, we worked out a deal with then Governor Asa Hutchinson to focus on how the city of Little Rock could truly step up with a strategic partnership to create now what we call a community schools model that focused on the most at-risk students at the most at-risk schools to provide wraparound services, from as simple as addressing food insecurity to as complex as it's focused on mental health services. That being said, we've gone from 1 school now to 6 schools that are now being focused on and creating more educational achievement through wraparound services in a matter of 4 years. And that's truly about the impact of our youth. And as we focus on our youth for the future, that truly propels our trajectory.
Yeah. And Mayor Lumumba, we met earlier and you talked about the idea of, and I wrote it down here, cooperative enterprise, right? I mentioned to you that we do work in the Mississippi Delta. And you said to me, hey, Fannie Lou Hamer had something that she was working on. Obviously, Fannie Lou Hamer, for those who don't know, is from the Delta. And you said that's carried forward and how you thought about cooperative enterprise. So talk a little bit about that and help folks understand what that meaning is and how you approach that work.
Absolutely. So when we look at economic development in our city, and for those that are unaware of Jackson's demographics, Jackson is considered the most densely populated the highest black population in the nation. So I share with people that I am a strong proponent and supporter of black and minority business. I say if 85% of your population is left-handed, then you need some left-handed jobs, right? But even more important than even supporting black businesses is supporting businesses that support the community at the end of the day. And in a capitalist society, even a black business can leave the community that gave rise to it in order to take advantage of different markets. And so Jackson is not a city that has a problem producing wealth. Jackson is a city that has a problem maintaining wealth. And so all of the money that is made between 9 and 5 just happens to be out by 6. We've seen businesses do well in Jackson, but have not been invested in the city. And so they may have packed up their bags and left. And so that's why we've looked to cooperative enterprise as something that we want to build, so that the very mission of those businesses, not as a replacement for private industry, but the very mission of those businesses is to support the communities that give rise to them. And so, you know, how do poor people bring their resources together in order to make do is not a novel or new concept. So we look at the history of people like Fannie Lou Hamer in the Mississippi Delta who organized poor Mississippi farmers and say, how do we expand on an old idea and look at how we have cooperative housing development? How do we bring to the local level an ability to manufacture and provide for each other in a new way? And so we are developing a business incubation space in our former Union Station so that we can start trying to support people, not only the private and individual small businesses, but these cooperative business models that we believe can support our communities as well.
Thanks for that. And this question is for both of you. Why don't we'll continue with you, Mayor Lumumba. You know, we talked about the idea of, you know, young leaders, next generation leadership, however you'd like to describe it. I mentioned that both of you were the youngest individuals elected to your respective offices. How did you think about that differently when you came into office? Understanding what had happened before, but now having somewhat of a different look on it. How did your approach differ because of your youth and moving your communities forward?
Yeah. Well, first, I think that I was blessed, as Mayor Suarez mentioned, that my father was mayor, but even before being mayor, he was a longtime community activist. Both of my parents were. And so they not only gave us a foundation of the importance of family, the importance of community, but more importantly, the idea of viewing the community as a family, right? And so that has fed my work over the years and led me into this space that I'm grateful to be a part of. But when I think of young leadership and I think of young people identifying what they should do and where they should be a part of making a difference, I think of the words of Dr. Frantz Fanon, who once said that in his book, Wretched of the Earth, that each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it, right? And so that's a powerful cry for us to understand where we have to be a part of making a difference in our world. And so I happen to live in a space and in an environment which is fertile and you know, ripe for young people to take the lead and learn of the lessons of our elders.
Yeah. Mayor Scott, same question.
Well, I think understanding when I came into office 4 years ago, I was 34 years old, the youngest mayor in our city's history. One of the things that we have to understand is many times we are elected for a number of different reasons. And so we wanted to change the status quo and really focus on positive disruption. We being millennial mayors, we don't like to wait. And so we choose not to wait because waiting has not gotten us anywhere. That being stated, having that positive disruption has really helped forward our city, forward our growth. And it's time that we continue to have more leaders who are stop focusing on waiting, turns and times and things of that nature, but focus on how you truly change for the people. And many times, as I was talking with Mayor Broom from Baton Rouge earlier today, there are certain organizations and peoples and constituencies that try to run your city, but they weren't the ones who were elected. And at the end of the day, we were elected to do the will of the people. And in leadership, we're put in leadership to do a job, to focus on change. If we don't want to do that, there's no reason for us.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to thank Mayor Lumumba and Mayor Scott for their insightful words today. We appreciate the opportunity.
Now, we are honored to be joined by our next speaker, who was just inaugurated a few weeks ago as the 57th mayor of Chicago. Growing up as one of 10 siblings in a working class family, he was raised with an awareness of the real issues that Chicago families face. When he went on to become a public school teacher and organizer with the Chicago Teachers Union, he learned how to bring diverse coalitions of people together to improve the lives of Chicagoans. Throughout his life, he has dedicated himself to fighting for social and economic justice, striving to create a thriving Chicago for all of its residents in all 77 unique neighborhoods. Chicago's mayors have been an invaluable part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors throughout our history, and we are honored to welcome the newest Chicago mayor to our organization and are eager to see the ways he carries on this legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. How's everyone feeling today? Well, I can tell you all just seem so thrilled and excited to have the city of Chicago with you today. I appreciate that warm introduction. I do greet you from the city that birthed one of the most remarkable revolutions that this country has experienced, the city that gave birth to Chairman Fred Hampton, someone who said that every child should have a meal before they go to school, someone who built health clinics and made it very clear that health care must be a human right. The same city, of course, that Reverend Jesse Jackson said, hope is alive and well. I'm talking about a remarkable city that when Dr. King came to visit, he came to the west side of Chicago where I'm raising my family. There you go. There's always one West Sider in any room that you go to in the world. But something that will always stick with me, particularly as a public school teacher, it was Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. that said that if the labor rights movement and the faith community, if they were to ever collide, what enormous potential it would have. Faith, civil rights movement, and the labor rights movement. Now that is the tradition that raised me. As a public school teacher and as a member of the Chicago Teachers Union, and someone who has been raised by a pastor who was also a carpenter. Do you understand the pressure when you're raised by someone who is just like Jesus? A lot of expectations. But to be the manifestation of what a generation ago dreamed of brings me tremendous honor and humility to be before you all today. And so I want to thank, of course, the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the leadership, our executive director, Tom Cochran. I just met Tom, and he kind of feels like he got a little preacher in him, too. I don't know if that's true. And, of course, the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, our vice president, Hillary Sheevy, and, of course, the mayor of this amazing city, Andrew Gither. Thank you for your leadership. Can we give them a warm round of applause? Again, thank you for welcoming me today and for bringing together mayors of great cities from across the country. We have so much to learn from one another, the challenges as well as the potential successes that our respective cities have and could have are reflected in this room. And it is truly an honor to stand before you today. Now, I ran to become the next mayor, or now the mayor of the city of Chicago, because of my love for people. I believe it's the greatest act you can ever demonstrate, is the act of love. My desire, of course, as mayor of the city of Chicago, is to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. But it's not just loving people. I want to be very specific here. It's about loving our young people. You know, I became a middle school teacher mostly because I knew there was no way I was going to take on the family business as a carpenter, as a pastor. Mostly being a pastor is a non-union job, and I just Those hours are terrible. The benefits, you have to wait to the great getting up morning to receive them. I knew that if I became a middle school teacher, it doesn't matter what I've done after that, the Lord would say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Thank you. And loving young people it's a part of who I am. So I won't quote too many scriptures today, but I will give you one. You know, Jesus made it very clear that if you caused a young person to stumble, you're better off tying a milestone around your neck and jumping in the lake. That's how important our young people are. And so as today we celebrate and recognize the rise of young mayors, let me just tell you, I appreciate you all considering me young. You do not know how good I feel to be considered young. Now, what I can say, though, is loving young people is not just the core of my value system, but my wife and I are raising 3 incredible young human beings, again, on the west side of Chicago in the Austin neighborhood. Braden is 8. She's in charge of the world. My middle child, Ethan, he's 11, and much like me, I am putting money away for his therapy as a middle child. No one did that for me, so we're just going to cut to the chase for him. And then, of course, my oldest son, Owen. I love them with everything in my heart, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for them. And I'm confident that there are people all over this country, including the city of Chicago, who feel the same about young people and their children. You know, raising a family is it's an incredible venture, especially in this world where the generational shift has been remarkable. So I'm a part of Generation X, which means I represent the last obedient generation on the planet. This new generation is something unique. But you know, I'm not mayor of the city of Chicago without the votes of young people. I won by 26,532 votes. In April, during the runoff, 27,000 new voters came to the voting polls who did not vote in February. I'm here because of voters under the age of 34, which is a remarkable testament to not just their political engagement, but how you can bring transformation in the very hopes that our ancestors could only dream of. You can bring that hope alive, and young people are on the cutting edge of doing just that. Let's recognize our young people. Now, as I said, teaching has always been a part of who I am. It's the best job that I've ever had, because when you're working with young people, there is not a more honest, truthful entity on the planet than teaching 7th and 8th graders. They tell you the truth. The truth of the matter is that there's been generations that have been organizing to bring about the type of holistic transformation that government has a responsibility to administer. But it was during my time as a public school teacher where I saw firsthand what disinvestment not only looks like, but the harm that it causes. So I taught in a community called Cabrini Green, USA, where the very essence of the city of Chicago was captured. Because my students would wake up every single morning and they could look out their front windows and they saw bulldozers preparing to destroy their public housing. And from their back windows, they could see one of the most wealthiest places on the planet, downtown Chicago. And for too long, many families across this country, and not just in the city of Chicago, have chased down an economy in front of them that is crumbling, while everything that they're running after is still behind them. Want to put an end to that type of dichotomy within our economy. No one should be too poor to live in one of the wealthiest countries at the richest time in the history of the world. That is a charge that I believe that all of us have. to create an economic infrastructure that provides hope and security, not just for today, but for posterity, and we can do that. Do you know sometimes, unfortunately, because government fails too many of our people, that our young people express not only their disappointment, but they begin to question if they actually deserve to participate in this economy. I'll share this last story with you. It's a student of mine I'll never forget. It was one particular day in my classroom where my students were having a tough time reacting to this incredible lesson that I put together. It's a very polite way of saying it got out of control in my classroom. We were missing each other. Now, this group of students have been through a lot. 5th grade, their teacher was not a good fit. She was a retiring librarian whose school had just closed, and she was forced to teach 5th grade. When they got to 6th grade, their teacher got sick, so they had a substitute teacher an entire year. And then when they got to 7th grade, they got a brand new teacher, Mr. Johnson. And so we set up these boundaries in my classroom that if a student got out of control, that I would sit down and take a time out. Because if you don't know, you can't give 7th graders timeouts. You have to take a time out. So I sat down, classroom got quiet, and I began to give one of the greatest speeches that teachers could ever give. And one of my students politely raised her hand. Now, I don't know about you, but if you are having a difficult day, and students are not listening, the last thing you want is someone to raise their hand during my incredible moment as a public school teacher. And so I called on this student, her name is Tajma, and Tajma said, Mr. Johnson, I want to tell you what the problem is. You see where I'm going? This is getting worse. Not only do you not want a student to raise their hand during your lecture, the last thing you need is a 13-year-old black girl trying to tell you what she thinks the problem is. And I said, well, Tajma, tell me, what is the problem, Tajma? She said, Mr. Johnson, the problem is you shouldn't be teaching here. She said you should be teaching at a good school. That day changed my life. When people can recognize quality and they don't believe that they deserve it, there's something inherently wrong with our economy, you all. Now, the good news, of course, if I was, egotistical and wanted to see my name in lights, I would have felt good that day. At least she recognized that I'm a good teacher. But the truth of the matter is, for too many people across this country, this economy has been wicked. It has caused tremendous stratification, divisiveness, and I don't believe it has to be that way. In fact, I'm of the belief that there's more than enough for everyone. That the city of Chicago did not just send a message through young people that we can guarantee access to public accommodations, the very public accommodations that descendants of slaves fought for, that the entire country has benefited from. The city of Chicago sent a message to the rest of the country that we get to run on our values and we do not have to flinch in times of pressure, divisiveness, that we don't have to hide from our policies and our values. We actually get to take these challenges head on. And as mayor of the city of Chicago, coming from a very large family, I'm one of 10. My oldest brother said, son, brother, if you are ducking in a fight, you're probably losing that fight. And so I'm giving a charge to not just the city of Chicago, but the rest of the country. It is time for us to swing back as mayors. And when we swing back, we're talking about transportation, housing, education, healthcare, good paying jobs. That these are accommodations that are available for us. And finally, we get to bring in our corporate partners. That we don't have to leave anyone behind. We don't have to have a zero-sum game, that there really is more than enough for everyone. It is truly my honor. I'm deeply humbled to be in this incredible position, and I'm looking forward to the work that we're going to do together to bring not just the city of Chicago together, but this entire country together. It's the city of Chicago, you all. It's the greatest city on the planet. God bless you all.
I'm gonna wait till he leaves before I say Chicago's not the greatest city in the planet. Miami. Anyhow, just he's a rookie. He's still learning. Last year, Congress passed a bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Act, which aims to strengthen our country's supply chain and works to reinvest in our nation's infrastructure for future generations. Our next speaker was a fierce advocate for cities when he served as mayor of New Orleans and also president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, as he continues to advocate for cities in the administration. Here to discuss how mayors can implement the act in their own cities is the Senior Advisor and Infrastructure Coordinator to President Biden. Please welcome back home, Mitch Landrieu.
Oh, my goodness. The great new young mayor of Chicago. That was fantastic, wasn't it? Give him another round of applause. And the old young mayor from Miami, Mayor Suarez, who has been leading this organization in an incredible way for so many years. Congratulations, Francis, on the work that you have done. To Mayor Ginther, thank you so much for welcoming us to this incredible city. It's so great to be with all of you again, to Tom Cochran and to the entire staff who I know you guys know work their fingers to the bone to make sure that this conference is the powerhouse that it always has been on behalf of our cities. And of course, I want to thank all the mayors here and of course your staffs. You know this, that you guys are smart, but your staffs make the deal. So let's just make sure you give them a round of applause while they're here. And it's great to be back in the state of Ohio. I want to just start off, if you don't mind, with what's been on front of the mind of so many of us. The president, as you know, spoke last night about the risk and the deal to really kind of throw the country into disarray and the fact that he worked hard to avert it. He fought very hard and secured a bipartisan budget agreement. That's a big win for the economy and for the American people, working hand in hand. Yeah, go ahead. He deserves a round of applause. He once again proved skeptics wrong and showed that he can get critical things done, as you guys do all the time, in a bipartisan way. He defeated a far right-wing Republican hostage-taking and secured a 2-year debt limit agreement while protecting historic accomplishments of the last 2 years, along with health care, retirement, security, key investments for the American people. The bipartisan budget agreement suspends the debt limit for 2 years. It averts a first-ever default that would have triggered a recession that would have cost us millions of jobs, 8 million in fact, and devastated retirement accounts. This agreement, as all of you I know agree, is good for the American people, the American economy, and for each and every one of us. This deal avoids cuts to the American Rescue Plan, state and local fiscal recovery fund. That's $65 billion to every city, and I assure you it has not been touched. This is a president that showed up for you. This is a president that defended you, and this is a president that delivered for the cities of America, as he always has and always will. The agreement also protects key priorities and accomplishments from the past 2 years, including the historic investments that are creating good-paying jobs across the country, from the bipartisan infrastructure law to the Inflation Reduction Act to the CHIPS Act and so much more. It honors the president's commitment to safeguard America's health care, to protect Social Security, to protect Medicare, to protect Medicaid. It protects critical programs that millions of hardworking families, students, and veterans count on. And now that it has passed, our country can continue building our economy, as the president says, from the bottom up and the middle out, and we are continually to build on our progress. Big time. How big time? Yesterday, a mammoth jobs report, quoting CNN, 339,000 jobs were created just last month. That's a total of 13 million jobs created since the president has taken office. We regained all the jobs lost in the pandemic and added 3 million more. We're at 3.7% unemployment, under 4% for 16 months in a row. That hasn't happened in the last 50 years. And 13 million jobs have not been created by a president, in this number, in 2 years, much less 4 years of the folks that have served in office. From lowering the cost of prescription drugs, insulin, healthcare, energy bills, and more, to giving families more breathing room, to investing in infrastructure, innovation, creating good jobs that don't require a college degree. The bottom line is this: President Biden's investing in America to make our economy even stronger, and it is working. Now, I'm sure that many of you know that before I became the senior advisor to the president and infrastructure coordinator, I had the fantastic honor of being the mayor of the city of New Orleans, my dream job and the best job that I have ever had. Now, just don't tell my boss that I just said that. But perhaps one of the biggest lessons I learned when rebuilding the city of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina with so many people was that nothing is impossible without cooperation, coordination, communication. And that means strong partnership between federal, state, and local governments. But with that kind of cooperation, anything is possible. Now, for years, all of us have waited with bated breath for Washington to deliver on infrastructure, because for most of the last century, we led the world by a significant margin when we invested in our people and when we invested in ourselves. But along the way, we stopped. For decades now, we have seen the failure of trickle-down economics and a failure to invest in ourselves. But ladies and gentlemen, we are changing that. We are now turning a corner, and as you know, because you're participating in it, we are building again. We are finally investing in America, and when we invest in ourselves, as the president reminds us, we always win. So let me talk to you about how we are winning. A few weeks ago marked the 18th milestone since the president signed into law the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bipartisan law, and it happened, to be Infrastructure Week as well. Now, all of you remember that Infrastructure Week historically has mostly been a joke. We talked about it, but nobody did anything, but not anymore. See, the president is investing in America in order to deliver not just an Infrastructure Week, but we are now in an infrastructure decade. Instead of talking the talk, the president is walking the walk, and we are here to bring the receipts. The bipartisan infrastructure law is the largest investment in American infrastructure in generations, and it is already delivering results for communities all across the country. We're breaking ground, we're turning dirt, we are getting things done. 18 months in, $220 billion out of the door, 32,000 specific projects in 4,500 communities across the country. Friends, we're talking roads, we're talking bridges, we're talking ports, we're talking airports, we're talking transit, we're talking waterways, we're talking rail, we're talking clean air and safe water, we're talking high-speed internet, we're talking about building a clean energy economy. And guess what? We're creating thousands of jobs while we do it, and jobs that don't always require a four-year degree. Now, that's a lot of money and a lot of projects that dot the map that you can see at build.gov, but in a relatively short period of time. But what does it actually mean? Under this president's leadership, we have begun to repair over 69,000 miles of roadway, over 4,600 bridges, invested over 3,000 new transit or school buses, started 13 very large major port and waterway projects, and there are hundreds of smaller port projects underway. We've started construction on hundreds of airports, including the 70 major airports that are underway with major terminal upgrades. We're starting to plug 10,000 often oil and gas wells, abandoned mine lands, Superfund sites, brownfield sites, and cleaning up the Great Lakes as well. We've also together enrolled over 18 million households in the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is making high-speed internet affordable for more and more reliable for communities who need it the most. Our list of results grow by the week, but just take a look at the work that's happening across the country in your cities right now. I was just in this great state 2 months ago in Cincinnati with Mayor Purval at the Brent Spence Bridge. We're putting more than $1.6 billion to upgrade the existing bridge, and we're going to build a new bridge in order to significantly reduce traffic along I-71 and I-75, a critical trade route between Canada and Florida. After years of failed promises, the project's actually going to break ground later this year. This past month, I joined the Army Corps of Engineers to break ground on nearly a $1 billion series of locks and dams along the Mississippi River in Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri that is critical to strengthening our supply chains and lowering costs for Americans and farmers, all while protecting local ecosystems. While I was there, I got to spend time in Mayor Tashura Jones's town of St. Louis. I also got to see Mayor Cooper in Nashville recently. He's backstage, and we just said hello again. We're investing infrastructure law funds to rebuild Central Taxiway at Nashville International Airport. Just outside of Nashville, in Lebanon, Tennessee, I visited Tritium, where they opened a new facility that is going to produce up to 30,000 DC fast chargers per year to electrify the Great American Road Trip. Now, before I visited, Nashville was hit as a tragedy. There was a mass shooting at the Covenant School that took 6 innocent lives. Evelyn D. Kaus, William Kinney, Haley Struggs, all students, all 9 years old. 3 school officials were also gunned down. Substitute teacher Cynthia Peak, head of school Catherine Kuntz, and custodian Michael Hill. He was the father of 7 children. I was able to touch them that night during the vigil and share some time with them along with the First Lady. Each of these people had families who loved them, families they left behind. When we attended the vigil, how can I put into words how it felt to attend one more of those things in cities that are so strived by gun violence, to mourn lives that were taken from us brutally and senselessly far too soon. It was yet another reminder, ladies and gentlemen, that we have a lot of work to do in this area. People offer thoughts and prayers, but really it's time for action, and we have to continue the work that has been led by this conference in that regard. So I commend that to you. And this is important. Thank you. We have to always stand in solidarity and protect those who are brave enough to lift up the voices of other people. You have a number of different states right now, like Tennessee and Mississippi, trying to encroach on the authority and the rights and the responsibilities of cities. I would commend to you to take care of that. Pay attention to it, watch it, so that the folks that live in cities can have the right to say about what happens in the cities that you are so ably trying to protect. We all need to stand together. We all need to continue to working together. And the president, he sees all of you, which is why we're going to communities all over the country. I've been to East Las Vegas, Mayor Goodman City, where I met business owner named Jesus Ramirez Fajardo. We're spending $25 million to invest and upgrade Stewart Avenue so that kids can actually just get to and from school without risk of getting run over by cars. He and his family members are going to be walking more safely. I just was in San Diego with Mayor Gloria for the ribbon cutting of the new 6-lane West Mission Bay Bridge, which is the largest infrastructure project that city has seen. It's going to transform the community. It's going to reduce congestion. It's going to increase safety, and that project actually is done. I went to Selma recently, where we're working with Mayor Perkins on a whole-of-government approach to build the city back better rather than back where it was. We're getting money to the ground. We're building resilient infrastructure like never before. I was in Montgomery during that trip, and I joined Mayor Reed to highlight the investments we're making to lift up communities across the city in the state of Alabama. We're already in that state have announced $3.2 billion for Alabama and county. I was in Madison, Wisconsin, where I joined Mayor Rhodes Conway to announce $15 million for critical... You're welcome, Mayor. Where you at? For critical safety improvements and upgrade to the John Nolan Drive Bridge that connect downtown and the South Side. Mayor, it was a beautiful day. Thank you for having me. I traveled to Arizona to join Mayors Romero and Gallego in announcing $233 million for the Gila River Indian community to support drought resilience and water conservation. I was just in Denver a couple of weeks ago with Mayor Hancock with a group of international mayors, where we're also moving forward on a major $350 million flood resilience project with the Army Corps of Engineers. I was in Reno, Nevada, Mayor, to see firsthand how, with Mayor Sheevy, we are seeing our investments in EV infrastructure, spurring private investments, a $3.5 billion Tesla EV manufacturing plant. It's going to get built as we electrify the Great American Road Trip. This is happening now all over the country. The list goes on. I've joined so many of you to highlight the historic funding going into your cities. You, my friends, are the tip of the spear. But none of this funding, none of these projects would be possible without the president and his bipartisan infrastructure law. They're hitting home right in your communities. And as you know, while some of the funding flows to the states, we have record funding geared towards the cities. Yeah, you can go ahead and say yes to that, because that's not a sure thing in this town. You know that. Like DOT's RAISE program. It'll help your cities modernize your transportation infrastructure to help people and goods move more safely. RAISE also connects communities previously divided by highways, train tracks, and more. Through RAISE, we've already announced $2.2 billion for 166 transportation projects across the country. And this summer, we're going to announce another $1.5 billion in RAISE grants that are going to help transform our cities for the better. You see, we're working hard to make communities safe through innovative solutions. Every year, as the Secretary of Transportation reminds us so often, crashes cost tens of thousands of American lives and billions of dollars to our economy. This is why just a couple of months ago, around the USCM annual meeting, we got $800 million out of the door for over 500 projects under our Safe Streets for All program. Projects that are going to make our roadways safer and prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. I have seen these projects close up. When I went to Houston a couple of weeks ago, Mayor Turner's city, I visited Telephone Road, where it's the crucial thoroughfare in the Bissonnette corridor called Telephone Road was redone. Houston is getting nearly $21 million to improve safety for that corridor, one of the most dangerous corridors across the city, and it provides safe transportation options for some of the city's most underserved communities. I was in Mayor Duggan's city of Detroit, where we awarded $24.8 million to redesign existing transportation infrastructure in high crash areas, making way for pedestrian and bicycle safety and designating safer speeds for vehicular traffic. Now, I also say this, as all of you have been out in your communities, I have no doubt that you've also seen and know and understand, because you live it every day, that our water infrastructure is terribly outdated in America. The president understands that. About 9 million American households, 400,000 schools and child care centers get their drinking water through lead service line and pipes. And as many as 2 million do not have, hear this now, 2 million Americans do not have modern sanitation systems in their homes. This is amazing. Last year I visited Milwaukee with Mayor Johnson, and we met Deanna Branch, a mother of 2 young boys, Jaden and Aiden, one of whom was hospitalized twice from lead poisoning, drinking lead poisoning in his water. I visited Lowndes County, Alabama, and went to the home of Aquila Grant, whose lack of wastewater infrastructure means that sewage is flowing into her backyard, and her kids cannot play outside. Just imagine that in the homes that you live in. I've been to Jackson, Mississippi. I was with Mayor Lumumba backstage just a minute ago after a major flood aggravated long-standing problems in the water system and left tens of thousands of people without any running water for days on end. Now, we're all working together to make sure that never happens again, but I just imagine it being my children. And I think that most Americans don't understand that we're in this condition, but you know who does? The President of the United States does. That's why we're delivering over $50 billion so that every American can drink clean water. $15 billion of which is set aside for replacing lead pipes, addressing contamination, and ensuring that our children and families have clean water for years to come. Because this president believes that everybody deserves clean air and safe water. And it is clear that we are now making progress across America. And we're doing it in lockstep, by the way, with the private sector. As we speak, companies have stepped up to the plate big time to invest unprecedented amounts of money in your cities. At this point, President Biden's investments under the Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act have already driven $470 billion in private sector manufacturing and clean energy investments, all creating good-paying jobs, many of which do not require a college degree. So just look at what's happening right here in Columbus. Intel has already announced that they're going to invest more than $20 billion to build 2 new factories and establish a new epicenter for advancing chip making right here in this city, creating 7,000 construction jobs, an additional 3,000 permanent jobs. And not far from Columbus, you have Honda Motors and LG Energy Solutions, who broke ground on a $4.4 billion plant in Jeffersonville, Ohio, producing batteries for new electric vehicles, bringing nearly 2,200 jobs to the region. My friends, this is happening all over America right now with you. This is what happens when you invest in America, when somebody shows up who cares, who builds partnerships, who communicates, who collaborates, who works really hard to make sure that the American people have a shot. And here's the bottom line. This president, President Joseph Biden, has laid the foundation to begin tackling decades-long economic challenges facing our cities. And we're finally delivering an economy that works for working families. But as we rebuild this country, we have to move with purpose on infrastructure and clean energy projects to transform our cities. We have a couple of big hurdles. Permitting is one of them, because we have to go fast. All the president says to me now is, hurry the hell up. I think that's my new name. The investments we're making are going to test our ability to build things quickly and at scale. For example, to meet our clean energy goals, we need to increase electric transmission by another 60% by 2030. That means we have to build transmission lines at twice our current pace. We work every day with stakeholders to make this happen. Historically, this process has struggled with delays and bottlenecks, but we have to get better. That was a critical piece, by the way, of the debt ceiling bill, including bipartisan permitting reform that maintains our environmental protections while enabling speed that we need. We have to do more, though, and some of that is going to require action from cities and state. And by the way, the same thing is true about workforce development. So to make all of this rebuilding a success, we have to build projects fast, but we have to build them in line with our values. I call it on time, on task, and on budget. Now I'll end with this. I draw on my experience as mayor of New Orleans every single day in this role. I know firsthand that the federal government is a critical partner, but folks, you know what? It's really you. It's the local officials, it's the mayors, in partnership with the governors and other folks that actually have to get this job done. That's why I prioritize partnership at every level and every step through the organization and the implementation of getting this money to the ground. So far, I have had over 1,800 conversations with officials across this country. I've traveled to dozens of cities across 30 states. Our success, all of our success, is rooted in clear communication, coordination, and collaboration. And to be clear, we know this isn't a Republican or a Democratic way to fill a pothole. You just have to fill the damn pothole. And as the president likes to say, we have to hurry the hell up. We know that better than anybody else. Mayors of America understand that because you live it every day. Everywhere I go, I share how critical it is that we work together every step of the way to ensure that these projects are buttoned up from start to finish. Now, we have made enormous progress together, and now one of our greatest tasks is making folks aware of the resources that we have that we can access. We're bringing everyone to the table, as I said, state, local government, outside experts, to deliver funding as well as technical and financial assistance to America's most underserved communities. We're 18 months into our infrastructure decade, and we're going to fall short if our investments do not reach everybody, because as the president said, unless we go forward together, we cannot go forward at all. So ladies and gentlemen, notwithstanding all the progress that we've made, we have a lot more work to do. And as the president often says, there is nothing that we cannot achieve when we try to do it together. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank you for your partnership. I look forward to continue to building a stronger America again. And I'd like you just to take away this one message. There is no better time to build a better America than now, and there is nobody better to build it with than you, the mayors. God bless you all. Thank you so much. Let's go finish the job.
Big panel. We're now going to close out this session with a really important conversation about the impact state legislatures are having on our cities. So far this year, state legislators have introduced more than 650 bills that would usurp the local power and local authorities of American cities. Let me repeat that, 650. These actions are neither conservative nor progressive, and they reduce or remove the ability of cities to keep their residents and ensure their rights are protected. Whether threatening to withhold funding or restricting basic city governance, these state actions constitute an outright attack on our local government. To discuss this matter, let me bring to the stage Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed, who is going to moderate the discussion, along with Jackson Mayor Chokwe Lumumba, St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones, Nashville Mayor John Cooper, Arlington Mayor Jim Ross, and Columbia Law School Professor Richard Bufault.
Good afternoon. Good to see everyone. I know it's been a great day so far, and I'm honored to be on the panel, be moderating this panel with our guests that we have here today. It's a very important topic that many of us are dealing with across the country. And when I reached out to Tom to ask about discussing it, he made a decision, an executive decision, to get us on a call with several former mayors as well as current mayors to discuss this issue, to see what we could do collectively as a U.S. Conference of Mayors to address this issue. And it's something that has been covered by Amy Liu, the interim director for the Brookings Institute, in an article titled Why State and Local Collaboration Matters, an economic development argument for this that was posted in the Brookings Institute periodical in January of this year. I encourage all of you to read it because a lot of it will be the pretext for today. But I want to start by asking each of our panelists, just in 2 minutes, to talk about what they're facing today, and then we'll discuss a few questions that we want to ask each of them. And so I'll start with Mayor Lumumba and ask him, what are you facing today in Jackson that our colleagues and our friends, in particular those on the Business Council, should hear as well?
Well, first and foremost, thank you again. Long time no see. I think that it is important in connecting the earlier conversation. I spoke about Jackson's water crisis and the fact that we were fortunate to receive money from the Biden administration. The fact that Mississippi historically siphons money away from cities like Jackson, that federal funds are sent down to the state and the state is used as a conduit in order to issue those funds, we often don't see them. And so I believe that that had a lot to do with the federal government's decision to make certain that that money went directly to Jackson. That infuriated the state. And so there was a torrent of state bills aimed at harming Jackson, and one that I think that has received the most attention nationally and internationally is House Bill 1020. And what House Bill 1020 aims to do is create a separate judicial system and district in the city of Jackson. First, it carves out and gerrymanders a district that is called the Capital Complex District. When that district was first identified, it was with around state buildings and institutions, and now it has expanded its borders into the most densely white populated parts of the city. In the vein of public safety, well, what's interesting about this district is that it is the area of our city that is the most affluent and has the lowest rate of crime, and so that Trojan horse just doesn't match the narrative of why it was created. But just a quick rundown of what it would do is not only create a district which calls into question the issue of equal protection. It expands the power of a Capitol Complex police force, which has had numerous officer-involved incidents, more than the city of Jackson and the surrounding cities combined over the last 2 years. It also creates appointed judges rather than elected, which is a violation of the voting rights of our residents. And that the appointments of those judges would come at the hands of the Mississippi Chief Supreme Court Justice. And the prosecutors for that district would be appointed by the Attorney General. When asked, and I'll finish with this, when asked why these people should be appointed rather than elected, Trey Lamar, the legislator who introduced the bill, said, well, we simply want to be able to get the best and the brightest, which feeds into the inferiority notion that a city like Jackson, that black people are incapable of identifying who best represents their interests.
Mayor?
So I also want to thank Tom Cochran for pulling this panel together. And a lot of times Missouri looks at Mississippi and what they're doing, and they'll say, hold my beer. In Missouri, since right before the Civil War, we had a Confederate-leaning governor who took over the police departments of the Union-leading cities in St. Louis and in Kansas City. 10 years ago, through a statewide referendum, voters overwhelmingly approved St. Louis gaining control of its police department. Kansas City stayed out. And 10 years later, after the election of the black woman mayor, all of a sudden, the leadership of our police force goes back to the state to try to get the state to take over our police department. And when asked, how is this going to make St. Louis safer, they have no answers. Previously under state control, it was a hot mess. There was a 5-member panel of which the mayor was one, and the mayor always got outvoted. And if you wanted to be a police officer, if you wanted a raise, if you wanted a promotion, you had to have an ace to connect you to someone on this 5-member board in order to get that to happen. And also police commissioners, this 5-member board, were often calling in favors for their children, for their relatives, to not be arrested or to get out of jail. So it was a hot mess. So in the middle of them going back and forth to the state to advocate for state control, we were also renegotiating a new police contract. And either they didn't read it, but I inserted a clause in that contract that said that this contract is only good under local control. They overwhelmingly ratified that contract, but I guess they didn't read that clause. So they continued to try to advocate for the state to take over our police department. But also what they didn't tell us, the state didn't tell us, was who's going to pay for it. And I said, if you're going to try to take my police department, you're going to have to pay the city for it. You're going to have to pay for all of our assets, all of our employees, and then it's on you. So fortunately, they failed because the session ended on May 12th and they didn't have enough votes. And then also some Republicans actually sided with us that this wasn't a good idea because, as we talked about yesterday, Republicans also do believe in smaller government, and this isn't small government. This is big government on steroids. So we've been able to fight back through lobbying, through making sure that the press knows and the people know what they're trying to do and how it doesn't make us safer. It was not about public safety. It was about power and control, period. Because if they wanted to make sure that we were safe, then they would pass common sense gun safety laws.
And I want us to touch on the gun safety in just a bit. Mayor Cooper?
Oh, well, thank you. It's a great privilege to be here. I want to thank Tom. I think this is an important panel. The preemption is really a symptom of a supermajority overreach. It's hard to correct that, but while they've got it, they're going to use it, and it is a form of gerrymandering to replace our representative government with people who are not even from there is, again, it's a form of malappropriation of democracy. Now, Nashville is a little bit of a poster child for this, I have to say. We have at least 20 separate actions by the state targeted at Nashville and city's Mayor Strickland is here. Memphis also gets somewhat targeted in a variety of ways, both petty and small. From street naming, we named a street for John Lewis, of course, a great figure in Nashville history. We got back Ronald Reagan Way, Donald J. Trump Way, to taking over city authorities. So the airport, the sports authority, the convention center authority. In part, I believe, because Nashville's very successful. And so this allows the state to claim a role in the success of the city. And if you look at the motivation of the big tranches of the legislative initiative on preemption, some of it, at least in Tennessee, is just purely about patronage. We can give prestigious authority board appointments to our contributors. It also has a lot to do with just identity politics for their voters. And then, sadly, identity politics at the legislative level, connecting with special interests, that it's just going to be easier to get what you want done in a city by buying a legislator one meal and doing it from the state legislative that you could never get done with a city that is pretty protective of what's going on. Now, in the end, so much of this ends up in court for right now until we're able to electorally redress this historic imbalance. And we've been very successful. I have a legal director who's got the best job in the world if you're interested in litigation. And we've won more than we have lost. But to give you a sense of what's available on the other side, in Nashville, they created a special court to hear constitutional challenges. Our local judges can no longer decide on a constitutional challenge. You have to have their own judges come to Nashville, their judges come to Nashville and hear the case of any constitutional challenge. Even with that, so much of this is so flagrantly unconstitutional, not from the federal side, but from the state side, given, and the professor will talk about this, embedded home rule rights that exist in the Constitution, that you are able to resist it, at least for a while. But they can go back and write more focused legislation. If you're relying on the courts, that's great for now. And we hope to, Jackson has been outstanding in dealing with the takeover of their airport authority. We have a takeover of the airport authority in our city. Every single great thing that our city is doing, the state is either trying to interfere, take credit for it, curb it, or prevent it from happening. And again, it is in a place that is very successful. And part of the initiative is taking the surplus money that's being generated by a successful city and reallocating it to the legislatures and then spend on their voters and their base. And ultimately, you can see why they want to do it, but it has to be resisted if we're going to have a true representative democracy. And they need to stop being hypocrites. They believe that the government closest to the people, we believe that too. We're delivering the goods on a daily basis. Let's keep that going.
Mayor Ross.
Well, I was waiting for the word hypocrite to come out somewhere. I appreciate you leading off the chart because they are hypocritical as hell. I am tired of people coming into my backyard and telling me how to do my business and my community. That's why we were elected mayors. The state wants to control. I went down with some of the Texas mayors and met with the governor and said, Governor, you got to help us with this preemption stuff. The governor says, well, Jim, I don't think that the representatives want to be city council. And I'm like, well, why in the hell do we have all the preemption bills? That's exactly what they're wanting to do. I take issues with it. We have 2 preemption bills that passed. We had tons that were authored and put forward. And the one preemption bill we call the super preemption because it's exactly what it is. Before it got to the floor, I called the author and I asked him, I said, listen, what are we doing on this thing? And he had a number of provisions in there, and there was one provision regarding jurisdictional issues. If the municipality or the mayors were to get sued, we could be sued in the county in which our city is in or contingent counties thereof. Well, as a personal injury lawyer, I don't want someone picking a county around me to sue me in. And he says, well, I'm willing to do a floor amendment unless I get too much pushback, because we have the votes to do what we want. We're going to do it anyway. And the arrogance of individuals doing this stuff is ridiculous. I want to just give an example of this preemption, this super preemption in Texas. And y'all tell me if this makes any sense, because I'm a fairly simple-minded Marine that I don't get everything. I love how they call it the Texas Regulatory Consistency Act. Would prohibit a municipality or county from adopting, enforcing, or maintaining an ordinance, order, or rule regulating conduct in a field of regulation occupied by a provision of certain statutory codes unless the municipal or county regulation was expressly authorized in another statute. The prohibition would apply to the following codes. Now, here's where the prohibitions apply: agricultural, business and commerce, finance, insurance, labor, natural resources, occupations, and property. Well, what the hell else is left?
Public safety.
What the hell else? No, it's all in there. It's all in. There's nothing else that remains for the state to sort of preempt. Just, anybody can then sue. The city can sue, the county can sue, the elected officials. Listen, I'm tired of the hypocritical stuff. One thing I love about mayors, and I've only been a mayor a couple of years now, we didn't do this job, we didn't jump into this for any type of huge paycheck or anything like that. We did this to take care of our community, our backyard. And the partisan bickering, the control efforts, and I think my fine colleague here from Nashville hit the nail right on the head. This is a way of gerrymandering the whole system when it comes to controlling the municipalities. And I'm tired of it. We get enough of the partisan bickering and fighting on a national level, on a state level. We don't need it on the local level. So if I was to do anything to my state and federal representatives, is keep your own crap in your backyard and leave ours alone.
Well said.
Sorry, that was too direct, wasn't it?
Not at all, not at all. Professor Briffault, if you would pick up a little bit on what Mayor Cooper talked about with the democracy challenge, but also what is the state of preemption right now? Are there any policies that you're seeing targeted more than others across the states?
Thanks very much, Mayor. Thank you for having me here today. I was struck by one thing Mayor Cooper said when he said Nashville or Tennessee is the poster child for this. I'm looking at these mayors and I think Alabama is the poster child, and Mississippi is the poster child, Missouri is the poster child, and Texas is the poster child. There was a mayor here from Florida, that's a poster child. Georgia's a poster child. Wisconsin's a poster child. Maybe before our last change of administration, Michigan would have been a poster child. This is everywhere. So maybe if I would say like three things, one is this very widespread. Second is there's always been state and local conflict. As long as there's been states, as long as there's been cities. There's been tensions about power and about partisan politics and about race and ethnicity. That's always been there. But I think there's been a jump up in the tension and in the kind of the aggressiveness of state interventions starting maybe about 2010. No, there's no actual date, but roughly 2010, I think things got a lot sharper. And what you're seeing is the kind of things that the mayors have been talking about. Blockages of local ability to act. Texas is pretty extreme on that, but There's a bill pending in Florida that's pretty similar. Jurisdiction stripping, as in Jackson. Asset stripping, including taking services or taking intervening with the structure of local government. Punitive measures, creating civil liability or taking away state aid in response to certain local actions. So I really think you're getting a kind of increasingly sweeping. I mean, preemption used to be more targeted. Even then it was pretty intense, like in firearms, it's very targeted. But it's becoming broader, hitting more areas of local action. It's becoming, I think, a little more blatant. And I think it's being felt, as you're hearing from the mayors, I think it's being felt more intensely. And it is, I think, an attack on the idea of local democracy, on the idea that government is best, which is closest to the people. It's more, just one last thing is, I think it kind of rejects the idea, or it's inconsistent with the idea that our states are big, complex places, where states have big cities, smaller cities, and suburbs, and small towns and rural areas. And the state's really not one size fits all. You can have different policies that may be good for some parts of the states and not others. And what home rule, what local democracy allows is for those policies to vary in light of the different needs and preferences and circumstances of people in different cities. What the preemption movement, and I kind of hate the word preemption because it's so clinical. It doesn't really get across the nuts and bolts of what's really happening, is that preemption kind of denies that and says we're going to have one rule for the state as a whole, even if a rural area or a big city or a small city has a different point of view as to how the rules are to be. And I think that is a major problem.
And I think it's important to mention, regardless of the size of city or the region that we're coming from, if economically cities are undermined, that impacts rural prosperity as well. And I think that's often lost when we discuss the so-called urban-rural divide that exists in our state houses across the country, is that the urban centers fuel the rural prosperity. And so there's, it's almost like forming a circular firing squad. It doesn't help anyone in that circumstance for the rural legislators to take that approach. But I want to capture something that you mentioned regarding firearms. And Mayor Jones mentioned it as well, and this is taken from the Gifford Center as it relates to my state of Alabama. In 2013, Alabama redrafted its firearms preemption laws to expressly preempt local regulations of firearms. Section 13A-11-61.3, the purpose of this section is to establish within the legislature complete control over regulation and policy pertaining to firearms, ammunition, and firearms accessories in order to ensure that such regulation and policy is applied uniformly throughout the state. Skip down to another subsection. Except as otherwise provided in this act or as expressly authorized by a statute of this state, the legislature hereby occupies and preempts the entire field of regulation in this state, touching any way upon firearms, ammunition, and firearms accessories to the complete exclusion of any order, ordinance, or rule promulgated or enforced by any political subdivision of this state, which could be city, county, village, and so forth. But yet we're the ones, when it comes to gun violence, and many of us are wearing the ribbons to end gun violence in our cities, we're the ones who get the calls about what's happening in our communities, and we're the ones who get criticized from our state houses about why cities or why communities are having so much violence. But yet we cannot respond on a local level in a way that may be prudent for us to do just that. And so I think, that's a major point for us to consider as mayors, and when we get to the end, maybe to think about what we can do collectively as the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So I wanted to just highlight that, but I also want to ask all the mayors, and I'm going to start with Mayor Lumumba, who should we be talking to help us push back on what's happening at the state level from your perspective?
Well, first, I would say that ours is the voice that has to insist that we are more, right? And so it's important that we take this directly to residents and community in the example that you gave so that they understand how it impacts them, right? I get the call from Ms. Jones in the Washington edition area who will say, I have a young person who is walking down the street with a semi-automatic weapon. Can you send the police, right? Only for me to say, well, unfortunately, by state law, right, that he is not doing anything illegal, right? I know that it puts you in fear. I know that all of the signs of danger are there, right? But we have to make certain that becomes a part of the everyday lexicon of our people to understand how state preemption is affecting their quality of life. But beyond that, I don't think that our conversation should just be to the obvious audiences. I think that there's another group that we have to speak to. When 1020 and the bill that was authored to take over our water system, or the bill that we talked about to take over our airport, when that came down, we had a rally on the Capitol steps. And I said that I wanted to speak to a group that you may not expect me to speak to, and that is our contractors, our business community. And I recounted the words that we got from the civil rights movement, from Martin Luther King, and he said, listen, in the end, we won't remember the actions of our enemies, but instead the silence of our friends. And I said that if you can gain wealth from this black city, right, if you can profit from these black dollars, then you need to support this black city, right? And you can't elect to sit on the sideline and see how this turns out. We need you to be just as vocal as we are, right, in terms of what you see taking place. And so that's a charge that I give. I do believe that it is important that we show support for one another, that we show the impact that this can have across partisan lines, right? And I think that the U.S. Conference of Mayors can take a lead there. But I also believe that our business council, those companies that meet with all of us very frequently, should make a statement that we are against state preemption, we are against attacks on our cities.
I often think about it like this. When states preempt cities from enacting common sense gun safety laws on the local level, it's like asking a surgeon to do open heart surgery with no tools, no operating room, no nurses, no anesthesia. So how can we fight back if we don't have the tools to fight back, or to reduce gun violence in our cities, if you're not giving us the tools we need? And just like Mayor Lumumba said, the businesses that do businesses in our city that profit off of what goes on in our city write those same checks to those legislators who are then voting to preempt things that are going on in our city. So if the businesses or those business owners don't stand up and see this as a real threat, then we're going to continue to have this conversation. So I'm pushing back, I've been pushing back on our local CEOs who support Republicans who have voted for this law, and said, you need to put your money where your mouth is. Cut off the spigot.
Mayor Cooper?
Well, yeah, I completely agree with the mayors. It's such a failure of accountability. Imagine in my state, a rural, mountaintop, East Tennessee legislator getting to administer Nashville. He's never going to be held accountable for what they passed. This kind of failure of basic representational democracy is of deep concern, and you do worry about their deliberate interest in wrecking it, right? And killing the goose that laid the golden egg that created the economic engine for the region, because they're all wrapped up in some form of kind of identity politics in doing that. And in fighting back, the law strategy is, I think, surprisingly effective, but ultimately it's going to require a coalition, and ultimately voters understanding that their representative is off ruining Nashville rather than actually helping their own county and region. And it's bringing the balance back, as seems to be missing so often in life, this kind of self-correcting mechanism, again, to get back to no longer being at the mercy of a hyper-partisan supermajority that seems entrenched for a long, hopefully not a long period of time, but I think all of us in these red states have to be prepared for no change happening anytime soon for that. In Nashville, there is this odd thing of the attempt to take over our local authorities. So if you look at the airport or sports authority, these are things that the city paid for, we built with county taxpayer debt guaranteed by the county taxpayer, and the state somehow is going to control it. This is an obligation of the county taxpayer. How is it that you're able even to hijack what's going on? Fortunately, you're protected in some levels by the bond debentures, just the rights to do that. There is a good legal strategy on almost all of these preemptions, because that's how it got created in the first place, was kind of with a reasonable partnership government going on. But in your, just be aware that it's in this list of mal-democracy movements. It's not just gerrymandering for districts. It is this preemptive level of unaccountability of often rural legislators having the power and to hypocritically administer cities or to come into cities. And again, our success is what they are jealous of.
Mayor Ross, you're in a very prominent community in a state that is growing by leaps and bounds economically. I would think the business interest would be a prime candidate for us to engage in this matter when it comes to the influence of metro economies, in particular in the state of Texas, cities such as Arlington. Have you found that to be the case? And if not, how do we change or how do we get them to get engaged, or any other entity that maybe we have not mentioned in this discussion around preemption?
You're right. Arlington is one of the big engines in the state of Texas with our entertainment district and everything on economic development. And that does help drive our state legislature. Our pushback has to come in the varying shapes that the preemption is coming, I think. You have preemption hitting each one of our cities from each one of our states a little bit differently. There's no black and white answer to how to make that pushback happen. My response is, I call it the way I see it. And we can't be afraid to say that's enough. You got to stop. And when I say we can't be afraid, we've got to reach out to the businesses. As mayors, we're relying upon those. And I talk to the ones in my city all the time and around there. We've got to reach out to our colleagues. You have to work together in the state. In Texas, we have the big city mayors, which are the 18 largest cities in the state. We have Texas Municipal League. You have to work together. We as mayors do everything better when we do it together. Whether we're doing the pushback, whether we're doing economic development, whether we're handling our police departments, we do it better together. And when we collaborate together about our pushback and how we're going about it, we're going to be more successful. When you have one city, St. Louis or Nashville or wherever, if it's one city standing up against your state, it's hard as hell. It really is. You don't hold any of the trump cards, they hold them all. And you're never going to win like that. So you have to bring in your colleagues of that. So I believe, and those around the state, they know I'll speak my mind, and we'll get after it. But you have to do it together, regardless of how it is. All the various pushback ways is going to really vary depending upon the preemption and how it's taken place in your particular state.
Professor Berthold, if you can put in the context kind of where we are and what's on the horizon for cities and state legislatures moving forward. For those of our colleagues who may not have seen it yet, or whose legislatures may even be of the same party affiliation as theirs, what's on the horizon and how do we as the U.S. Conference of Mayors address this proactively?
I think what may be on the horizon is the bill that Mayor Ross was talking about in Texas. And as I said, there's something very differently written, but taking the same stance of a kind of a sweeping attack on local ability to regulate and making local governments vulnerable to lawsuits when they go kind of one step beyond existing state law. And that's sitting on the governor's desk in Florida. And depending on what happens with these, that may be a template for other states. There's a lot of copying when states move into preemption. There are model bills being shared. Some of them come from industry, some of them come from sort of more hot button social oriented groups, but these don't come out of nowhere. And so some of it is, I think you might see there. I think also the two other mayors, Mayor Jones, Mayor Lumumba, mentioned the areas involving policing. That again is becoming a very hot issue, and I think and it's also picking up, impacting prosecutors, local prosecutors. But I think there's more action at the state level to try and kind of secure a greater state oversight, involvement, interference in what's going on with local decisions involving policing and criminal justice. But it's almost like it's like a waterbed. You push down here, it'll bounce up somewhere else. I mean, a few years back, it's all been done on firearms. There's not actually much more to do. A few years back, a lot of focus was on so-called sanctuary issues. There'll be issues, I think, involving anti-discrimination law and limiting the abilities of cities to go further than whatever the state's human rights law is. So I think it's a bit of a moving target, but I think actually the mayor's experiences have actually kind of highlighted a lot of the kind of the marquee issues that are out there.
Very well. We're getting close to the end of our session. I do realize there are others that are going, so I'm going to skip some of the other questions that I had and just ask maybe those on the panel to give maybe a 2-minute closing remark in terms of how we move forward, how you're dealing with this in your city, and then what as an organization you see us doing to be effective in this battle.
Well, I would say first and foremost, where we don't find the support that we need and in fact attack from the state level, we don't limit our request or how we look to for support just to the state. I was told a long time ago, if your plan for success depends on someone else to see value in you, then you don't have a plan, you have a wish list, right? And so we have become adept and nimble in Jackson to make sure that we engage philanthropic support, that we engage federal support, that we elevate our voice so people understand what is taking place. And so we put an international spotlight on what I think is a human rights issue, right? When you have a state that doesn't support infrastructure significant like water, when you have a state that supports oppressive policing practices, then I think you have a human rights issue, right? And so we have to speak loudly about that so that we make sure that we do all that we can to defend ourselves. But I would also caution and make certain that those that may be in the audience and may live in a community that you have yet to see a specific attack on your city, that if they come for us by day, they'll come for you by night, right? And that this isn't just limited to democratic cities, that one, what's good for the goose can be good for the gander, and if we open this Pandora's box, then we cannot put it back. And so we need to be concerned with this. But also the last thing that I will say is that, many of us watched the actions of January 6th with fear and astonishment because we saw the threat to democracy and the transfer of power. This may not appear as blatant of an effort, but it is, in effect, the same thing that is underway. This is an attack on democracy. This is an attack on the voice and the will of the people and who they elect and the leadership that they select in order to promote their interests, and saying that what we cannot get by electoral means, we will get through state legislation.
Well, I don't have too much more to add after my brother mayor here, but I will say that just like he said, if you think it's not coming for you, you're asleep. So make sure that you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Lawyer up, lobby up, get your coalitions together, and not just your coalitions of, your local coalitions. I've received a lot of support also from USCM, from NLC, from other national organizations, putting out public statements saying that a state takeover of our police department is an attack on democracy and it's just flat out wrong. So making sure that the organizations that you are a part of are also on your side when this comes for you, because I won't say if, when it comes for you.
Well, call it out. Expose the hypocrisy, the double standard that this represents, the malappropriation of democracy. Partner with business. Get all your partners together. Get ready for the next legislative session. I think this is going to build as a get out the vote effort through the presidential election next year. Your city citizens have rights too. They pay taxes too. They're people too. And the state constitutions recognize that, and we need to use the protections that we have effectively. But the big communications strategy here is to somehow to view cities as failures, and the answer to that is for each of us to be very successful. And that, as we have a saying in Tennessee, the legislators, legislate against Nashville, but all their children want to move there. So that response is pretty hard on them because it's undeniable. And the cities are the future, and just make that future a bright one, and then I think people will be able to put it into perspective.
Right now, most of what we're hearing are Republican-led legislatures preempting Democratic-led municipalities. But that's not the only way it happens. It certainly has happened the other way around from time to time. So I don't want to do what I preach against and become real partisan-esque with this. We don't want Republican mayors being told by Democratic Congress what to do with their cities any more than we want Democratic mayors being told by Republican Congress what to do with their cities. Keep those party politics out of our backyard. We don't need that to run the cities. We do pretty well without it. I don't know how many of these functions I've attended now, but you don't hear mayors hanging out at the bar saying, well, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Because we don't give a crap.
That's right.
We care about the community. That's it. So it's a fight. And folks, if you're going to win the fight, you can't just cover up and play defense. You got to hit somebody. So ball up your fist, not literally. Oh, don't misquote me. I ain't saying beat someone's ass.
Mayor Ross told me to hit somebody.
Yeah. Mayor Ross said, I'm going to whoop your ass. But theoretically, go whoop someone's ass and let them know you ain't going to mess in their backyard like this.
Love it. Professor, any closing remarks?
Last thoughts are, I think maybe the first step are programs like this, letting people know that this is happening, that it's not just happening in your state, but it's or it hasn't happened yet in your state, but it's happening in a very widespread way and is often quite coordinated. And then I think reminding people that many of these measures interfere with your ability as mayors, as city governments, to get stuff done for your people, and letting people know that. That I think, obviously, publicity and communication is not the end, but I think it's the beginning. And I think getting the word out that this is happening and people have to think about what it means for the ability of cities to do their jobs if they're not being allowed to do their jobs by their states is a real problem. People should be made more aware of that.
Very well. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you on the panel for participating, all of you who have been listening and engaged to this. Thank you for your participation as well. I certainly want to thank again Tom Cochran for responding to that call and making this a priority issue for us to discuss. And I certainly want to thank our president, Francis Suarez, for his leadership as well. So thank you all very much. Have a great day. Be safe on your travels back. Thank you.
And tonight, I look forward to seeing all of the meeting attendees at our host event, Kemba Live. This event is a platform to honor the creative communities around us, enjoy a night of entertainment the Columbus way. This session is adjourned. See you tonight.